Hello, everyone.
No.
Hi.
Shut up.
I missed the thumbnail today.
You weren't in it? I just did it. I did the whole group, so I think you were in it.
Wait, when?
It's like 10 seconds ago.
I wasn't in it.
Oh, okay.
I think it last.
I'm going to delete that part out. So, it's Monday, big group, so know that Friday, 2 more Kias are due.
Yeah.
If you're one of these people that didn't do your Kia from chapter 1 and 2 on time, lucky you, I haven't even checked it yet. I will be really soon. I'm not encouraging you to do it now, but I haven't checked it yet. Yes. Oh, yeah. Notes, books, Google, everything. Everything and anything. Okay. Next 2 Kias are due Friday. Correct. No notes used during the objective exams. 3 exams, each to 21 points. You do 3 of them. And then you also have that blue book essay. 4 exams.
We have 3 days.
3 days to do it. Thank you. You're delightful. If we achieve everything I want to achieve, we will cover a few slides, and then we will take a look at, you should have right now a good faith attempt at the second paragraph plus a revised first paragraph. You can probably see how this is going to go over the next couple days. We will take a look at your second paragraph, and then you'll revise it and have a good faith attempt at third paragraph for tomorrow, and on and on and on, so that we're all ready to rock and or roll.
The attendance, just saying, Katie just
For
walked
the
in.
10th, 11th, and 12th.
Would you like me to keep
The
this
10th, 11th,
class?
yes, I do. Okay, here we go. We are now looking at a breakdown of Southern society from those at the top, and there were few, but they had power, to those at the bottom, and there were a lot, but they had no power. Does anyone recall what this is called? When you organize a society,
Feudalism.
feudalism is a version of
Hierarchy.
a caste system. A caste system is a way of organizing society. And here's Southern society. And at the top are the people dressed in white with beards, with the dog Belvedere, and they're sitting on the front porch drinking tea. Belvedere, come here, boy. And Belvedere comes onto the front porch. Meanwhile, the slaves are singing in the fields. Oh, thank you, massa. Oh, massa. It's more of a corporation. The plantation is a corporation. There's almost no contact between owner and slave in the field, right? Someday you'll work for maybe McDonald's or Apple. You're not, if you work for Apple, you're not going to meet Mr. Apple. First of all, there is no Mr. Apple. He did. But even if there were a Mr. Apple, you wouldn't meet the guy. It's too large of a corporation. You don't meet the owner. Same thing here. These are very few. They were very wealthy. They owned 20 or more slaves, generally as a rule. And if you want to know, well, what does that mean? Slaves cost at this time about what it costs to have a nice car. So in today's money, somewhere between 20 and 30 grand per slave. Per slave. Okay. Now, I don't have 20 or 30 grand to buy 20 cars, but I do own a few crappy cars. Same thing. That sounds terrible, but most people who own slaves would own 1 or 2, and then they wouldn't be of the finest quality. They weren't of excellent pedigree. Think of those of you who own dogs. If you own a dog, it's probably a mutt, because you're not going to spend $4,000 to $5,000 on an English Terrier with the finest pedigree. Oh, short. Okay. These people were very few, but they dominated Southern government. They're the ones that got what they wanted. Very few of them. Under them are your smaller farmers. It says here the largest social group. And how many slaves do they own? 1 or 2. and they worked side by side with those slaves in the fields, knew them on a first name basis, probably a fairly good relationship with the slave. Whereas up here, can you imagine? Up here, this group here represents the image you have of slavery. Slave society? Who got that privilege? Are you telling me that 40 kids do not know who was the dishing out? They were the slave drivers. The slave drivers. And by the way, you know who slave drivers were? Other slaves. Other slaves who were given that responsibility. I'm now synthesizing. Later on during World War II, we will study how is it that the Germans were able to round up all those Jews. You know what they did? In part, they hired Jews. They hired Jews to round up the Jews. How did the U.S. Army defeat the Native Americans out west? By hiring Native Americans. It's a common practice. Okay. Under them are what we would today call poor white trash. Landless whites, probably indentured servants themselves, extremely resentful of slaves because it's because of those slaves that I don't have a job. When Southern society went the slave route and abandoned indentured servant route, these people were the ones that lost, along with slaves. That wasn't exactly a win. Yay, we have a job! Sweet was not what they said. Okay. And then you had a group called indentured servants. They're still around. They have decreased in number. With the decrease of indentured servitude, slavery increases. Makes sense, doesn't it? Why would you hire someone when you could just buy someone? Why keep paying for a taxi when you can just own a car? Is the idea, is the method. Okay. And then, of course, slaves. Any question on this column here? This is a breakdown of Southern society. Something like 3%, and percent. Yes. Well, what made slavery suddenly affordable was if you bought one, you had perpetual slavery. Just rape the slave girl. You're good. Imagine if you could do that with a car. Have a car and then have the offspring of the car. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Weird. Okay. We are now looking at the conclusion made by a group of Puritans about why their life sucked so badly. They were dying every day, and hostile Indians are around them, and no one's protecting them, and the conclusion was, it must be witches. Now, does anyone know anything about the Salem witch trials?
We read
a book about it last year.
Very good. Who were the accusers?
the girls.
A bunch of young teenage girls. Okay, now, some of you are girls.
We're not that crazy.
No, of course you aren't, but and by the way, guys are guilty of this too, but isn't attention nice? Isn't getting attention nice?
Yeah.
And when you accuse someone of being a witch, look at all the attention you're getting. Everyone sympathizes with you. Oh, you poor thing. Wow. Now, this is dreadful, but it's similar to what's going on today with the Me Too movement. As far as accusing someone of sexually inappropriate behavior. Now, I am absolutely not saying they're making it up. But it's possible that some are. Some are making it up. Are we aware that right now there is a vote that's supposed to take place this Wednesday on the newest Supreme Court justice? Did we know that? There's an opening for Supreme Court. His name is Brett Kavanaugh, and he went through his hearings and smooth sailing. Nothing happened. And then did anyone see what happened over the weekend?
Did somebody accuse him of sexual?
Yep. Somebody wrote a letter She's a professor at some California school, wrote a letter saying some number of years ago, that guy raped me. He raped me. What? Sorry?
It was in
1980. Okay. Yeah. So a while ago. And suddenly out of the blue, she's writing this letter like, yeah, he raped me a couple decades ago. I'm not dismissing what she's saying at all. Because if it happened, it happened. That's awful. What some people are saying is, why now? Why didn't you say this a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 20 years ago? And by the way, she said, I did. But now he's getting all the attention, and now people are starting to pay attention to what I have to say because of what he had to say. Anyway, this is a weak link because I'm not suggesting that accusations are false. But what I am saying is a lot of attention is being drawn to this. These teenage girls accuse people of being witches. Now, again, I assume some of you know about these witches. What kind of trials did they do? Like, I'm accusing Jet here of being a witch. They would then test if Jet was a witch. Does anyone know what they did?
Right.
Go ahead.
One of them was they like threw them off a cliff, and if they would fly.
That's right. They give them a broom and push them off a cliff. And if they flew away, get back here. We gotcha. Okay, so there was that one.
They sunk or float.
Very good. So they would throw you underwater, they'd weigh you down, and after a certain number of minutes, if you came back up alive, you're in trouble, Missy. Okay? Or they would weigh you, and if you weighed less than a duck, then you were a witch. Which, of course, leads to this question that I have. How was anyone convicted? With those tests, how did they ever be like, yep, we were right? I don't understand. Anyway, I have here in parentheses, quotation marks, Red Scare. I'm synthesizing. Has anyone ever heard of that term?
Yes.
What is it? What was it?
Everyone's a communist.
Everyone's a communist because we do not want them.
Very good. So it was a 1920s and later on a 1950s episode where you were accused of not being a witch, but being a communist. And of course, everyone assumed it was true. Just like when you were accused of being a witch, everyone assumed it was true. Again, I kind of hesitate to say this because I am absolutely not trying to diminish what's going on today. If you know you're accusing someone of sexually inappropriate behavior, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But some people are comparing what's going on today to similar things here. You accuse and all of a sudden it's true. Okay. 1692 is your year. 20 women. Usually that doesn't even get a blink of an eye here, but 2 dogs.
Yeah.
They executed 2 dogs for being witches. Poor dogs, yes. The last bullet is the summary of why. Why did the Puritans reach for such a strange conclusion? And I'm going to suggest that this happens all the time. Later on in this class, we are going to study how in the world Germany as a collective lost their minds in the 30s and 40s. And I'm going to suggest it's the same thing. When times aren't going so good, you go for the nutcase solutions. Germany, after World War I, had massive unemployment. They owed the U.S. and Britain and France massive amounts of money. And yet the French had taken away their most productive chunk of land because of World War I. And so they had no way to recoup financially from it. And they are in a hole. And along comes this guy saying, I got it. I have an idea. And did Germans look at him and say, you're nuts? Nope. They said, let's give him a shot. Let's give it a shot. What the hey? Same thing here. The Puritans are surrounded. Their life is sucky. And along comes this group saying, we know why this is happening. And when times are sucky, you go to the extreme solutions. You see it time and time again. There's a suggestion that that's what's going on now in the U.S. That, and again, I'm not saying this is true or not, but there are those that say, why in the world would you vote for Donald Trump? Same thing. Are you going to the extremes as a solution? Again, I'm not saying this. I'm just saying that's what some people are saying. Okay. Questions? One slide left. So again, we're looking at the structure of society. On the left is how Europe was organized. And on the right is how the colonial society differed. On the left, you've got feudalism. So at the top, you have the king, and then you have the people that answer to the king, the tenants-in-chief, the knights, the lords, and then at the bottom, peasants. But in colonial society, there is no nobility. No one's a knight here. No one's a king. There is something called social mobility. It's still true today, at least hypothetically, it is still true today. Social mobility. Anyone know what it means or want to take a shot? Very good. Anybody in this room can make it. Anybody in this room, you can make it. Work hard enough, get good grades, learn to hike that football to the punter, get a full scholarship to some prestigious university, graduate with honors, start your new business, Facebook, or whatever. Mr. Walmart. That's a guy. His name was Sam Walton. He's a guy. Or Steve Jobs, or any of these other people. They were regular people. Steve Jobs started Apple Computers in his garage. Right? Anybody in here can make it, which is not true in societies where there is a line between you and the people below you. You have no chance in those societies from going from your lot in life to my lot in life. You can't. There's a wall. But in the US, in American society, it's not a wall, it's a ladder. Which also means you can climb down, right? You can blow it, but you can climb up. It's available to you. Go public education. Next idea that is true in colonial society is a term that I've used before. It's called primogeniture. Anyone remember?
West expansion.
Sorry?
West expansion.
It certainly led to westward expansion. What is it, though? That's right. The firstborn gets the wealth. What are you going to do if you're the secondborn? Go west. And then, of course, we have slavery. Did they have slavery in Europe? Yep. But it was outlawed in Europe before it was outlawed in the colonies and the states. Okay. Let's keep going here. Does anyone know what you're looking at? What is this thing? I'm sorry? The Columbian Exchange, also known as, look at that shape. It's called the triangle trade. The triangle trade, right? We talked about this before, that the labor for this economic venture would come from Africa, the raw materials would come from the Americas, and the entrepreneurs would be in Europe. Right? The owners would be in Europe, the workers would be the Africans. Where would they grow their crops? In the Americas. And so so this isn't quite accurate. Slaves would come from Africa and go to the Americas. The raw materials, they would grow the cotton and export it to Europe. Europe would then make it into finished products. And it says here they would send it to off the coast of Africa somewhere. Well, no, they would send it everywhere. So this black arrow should be pointing in all directions. Does anyone remember what they called the economic system upon which this is based? What was that called again? Rhymes with mercantilism.
Mercantilism.
Brilliant. Mercantilism. Okay. In order to enforce mercantilism, the British passed a series of laws called the Navigation Acts. The British Parliament passed a series of laws called the Navigation Acts, which basically said, hey, colonies, you have to sell your stuff to us on our boats. And you must buy stuff from us. You cannot buy tea from France. First of all, why would you? French tea? I've never heard of it. You have to buy stuff from us. You must sell stuff to us on our boats. On our boats. So it says here, number one, most products could only be sold in England. Examples, sugar, tobacco, and then something called indigo. Does anyone know what indigo was? It was the color. It's a blue dye That's what indigo is. Okay.
I heard you.
Who does this benefit? Who does this economic system benefit?
Mother
country only.
Yeah.
The colonies don't say, yay! No. So can anyone see through the looking glass and predict how colonists might start fighting this? You have to sell stuff to us and you must buy stuff from us. How do you avoid that? Well, that's true. You dump tea into a harbor. Very good. Or what if you want to buy the French t-shirt, right? The British pass a law, you got to buy the British t-shirt. And how do you buy the French t-shirt? What's that word? I'm losing you. To buy illegal drugs, of course, what you do is you go to Walmart and you make a purchase, right? Today, I mean, the black markets. Very good. Also known as smuggling. So the colonists, to fight the Navigation Acts, will engage in smuggling. Okay, and they will also engage in what today we would call terrorism. Back then, that word didn't exist. They just called it, you dump the tea into the harbor.
Patriotism.
That's the better.
One last thing that I made a mistake, and I should have had this bullet with that one. Sorry. White women in the colonies were better off than women in Europe. Women in Europe had to marry or find the nunnery and become a nun. White women in the colonies actually could own property. As soon as they got married, they foregoed, is that a word? Any legal rights. But if you were a single woman in the colonies, that was your property. It was in your name. But again, marriage ended that little, that silly little exercise. Question?
So why would you want to get married?
Well, okay, so Jet just said, well, why would you want to get married? For love. Children.
You can have children in America.
Yes, sir.
Not that clean.
Primogeniture. Right.
So you said there was
Yeah, you said last line.
I lied. A little more. See, Tweety Bird is telling Sylvester the cat, who's carrying a piano and can't see where he's going, he's guiding him up these stairs while he's carrying the piano. Of course, the stairs simply end, right? But Tweety doesn't tell Sylvester that they simply end. So he says, a little more. And now Sylvester is standing on absolutely nothing. But as you know, in cartoon world, you do not fall until you look down. And then at the camera, then you fall. And then an anvil falls on your head. It's the rules. It must be done.
I feel like you're a person to watch Tom and Jerry a lot.
Yeah. And movies. Because thanks to movies, I know if there's a bomb, what you must do is jump. Because then the bomb force will simply propel you away. Thank you, Tom Cruise. If your feet are connected to the ground at all, you will be ripped to shreds. But simply leaving the ground pushes you away. I know that now. So I have learned.
Captain America taught me to jump on top of it.
Go at it. Go nuts.
Manufactured.
Last slide here is talking about dominant denominations. We're talking about religions. Dominant religions. As you learned in previous classes, Anglicans came over here and dominated. And then some other colonies said, well, we'll be tolerant. Pennsylvania, for example. The Anglicans moved and continue to be Anglican in what we would call the South, the southern part of the country. And interestingly enough, this was the most pro-British area when the Revolutionary War occurred. The South was the most pro-British area. The North changed their name to what they called the Congregational Church. The most anti-British area during the war. Boston was ground zero, man. Boston was the spot. Last bullet here. These were both tax-supported churches, which today is absolute poobah, taboo. Tax-supported church today, that doesn't happen. But during the colonial times, these were both tax-supported churches. That's the end.
Are you lying again?
No, I'm telling the truth. This is it. When you're ready, get out the material that you have been working on as far as the writing of essay. Is it in your sample blue book? Wonderful. Is it not? Fine. Right now, you should have version number 2 of your first paragraph and version number 1 of your second paragraph. Is that about right? That's what I asked you to do. I have thousands.
Do you need that?
I have thousands.
This?
You
You
want to
go right
follow
ahead.
me?
Take your time. These people are gone today.
Of course, you are absolutely encouraged to revise your first paragraph again. And then, by the way, again, and again, and again, and again. So that, man, on that day when you're writing the actual version, no, like the back of your hand, which I've never gotten that comment, but whatever. Okay?
I can't really memorize the back of my hand.
Exactly. This happened when I splattered grease all over, and it permanently scarred me right there.
Therefore,
I'm
your
okay,
hand is
though.
always changing and you can never memorize
Grease is
it.
hot. So you can probably predict what I'm going to ask you to do. Have somebody read over your second paragraph with a set of fresh eyes. Do they make a claim? Is there a topic sentence there? Now, for most of you, I think it's going to be the paragraph that represents the argument they do not agree with. So the topic sentence should be something like, Zinn mistakenly believes that, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Although you are allowed to not write it that way. This might be the paragraph you agree with. Okay? So there should be a topic sentence there. And then there should be some sort of document evidence, no quotes necessary. And there should be a footnote there. They should be referring to a specific document and paraphrasing what the document is saying. Okay? And then analysis and historical example. Now, I got a few people, I was in the resource room and read a couple. The historical example needs to be Pacific, an actual Pacific example. And when I say Pacific, I mean the ocean. No, I mean specific, but I like being annoying. It's what I do. Specific example. Analysis is Columbus did a lot. That is not specific. That is analysis. That is a judgment. A specific example is an actual event. And maybe you use the words for and then the word example. For example, comma. And then you tell me a little story of something specific Columbus did or whatever. Okay. Specific example followed by analysis. Analysis is judgment, your judgment. And then you say, but he's wrong. Zinn is wrong. And then you hit me with that example that shows he's wrong. But you do not mention Schweikert and Allen, or if you think Schweikert and Allen are. You don't mention the other historian. Okay. Just as important as the end of that paragraph where you have to say, you see, this shows Zinn is wrong, or Schweikert and Allen is wrong. By the way, don't say you. Y-O-U. Don't use that word. You. What do you mean? No. One might conclude, or the conclusion is inevitable that. Don't say you. It's weird. Okay? Look at it. Give it back. The more you mark it up, the better. And then guess what I want for tomorrow? I want a revised version of paragraph 2 and a good faith attempt at paragraph 3, which is simply the second argument from the historian you disagree with. And you got 25 minutes. Let's go. Okay? Let's roll. Let's make it so that you can get stuff done. Yes. Yes, I will run to my room right now and get more copies. We're done.